The gold standard of marketing that I always like to come back to is that right message, right channel at the right time.
Absolute nirvana for marketers.
Absolutely.
Brendan, thank you so much for being here. Could you just introduce yourself and what you do at Medibank?
Yeah, so I'm the Marketing Enablement Manager at Medibank, and my role is really about driving the strategic capability uplift of our tools in the business around marketing to help build the customer experience.
You've told us that you're orchestrating how Medibank uses data better to deliver better outcomes. Could you paint a picture of what that looks like in the day-to-day world?
Yeah, so I think really it comes down to designing experiences that the customers want in a timely fashion. So the gold standard of marketing that I always like to come back to is that right message, right channel at the right time.
Absolute nirvana for marketers.
Absolutely. And we want to obviously have Data 360 as the core of that. That provides the foundations for us to be able to design that experience. And for us, it's all about making sure that with the many different products we have, that we're able to connect those together, try and eliminate those data silos, which we have had a lot of business challenges around, and make sure that we're speaking to the customer when they need that sort of next conversation or next best action. That's kind of really what it boils down to for us.
Now, I know that Medibank moved from using a DMP or a data management platform to essentially different ways of managing customer data. Could you talk us through why that shift mattered for Medibank?
Yeah, it's a great question. So we've been on the journey for a few years now with Data 360. That kind of started back in 2020, where we sort of joined the pilot. We're actually one of 10 companies globally, which is quite exciting and something to be proud of. And it wasn't until 2021 that we sort of had this legacy DMP, which was obviously driven a lot by that third-party cookie reliance. We wanted to kind of shift away from that. So I think the real unlock for us was Data 360. It's enabled us to do a lot. I think some of the key business challenges it's helped us solve is around the media audience targeting and activation to drive that smarter media effectiveness, but also those customer profile insights and really unifying those. And that's sort of the journey we've been on, and we're really trying to, I guess, find our cost efficiencies and time savings there and really progress that part of it and look at what sort of additional use cases we can evolve into.
Amazing. Now, at Salesforce, we hear a lot about disparate data sources, and I know Medibank, like many businesses, had to work hard to unify those. What did that transition from data silos look like, both from a business and then a customer perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a core challenge that I think many businesses face, and it's not an easy one to unlock. I think over the years, as a business, you start to, deal with systems that have just accumulated lots of data, and not a lot of thought has gone into necessarily how those are used. But obviously, trying to unify it is the key there, and sort of for us in that digital transformation journey, I think what we've really focused on is really honing in on those high impact use cases. So using the example obviously as Data 360, as I mentioned, we've sort of spoken about sort of that media activation, audience activation piece, but also the unifying customer profiles and insights. And I think focusing on those high impact use cases has helped build the momentum in the business. Because to be honest, Data 360, it touches so many different parts of the business. You've got security, data governance, tech, marketing, sales, and service. So having that alignment up front is key with all those stakeholders, and it sort of helps us build that value realization a lot more easily. So that's kind of how we've gone about trying to unlock those data silos. Obviously still on the journey, but we're progressing there with Data 360.
And so you've really centralized everything into Data 360. And I know that sounds really simple in theory, but I can imagine bringing together online behaviours, offline interactions, product information, that can be quite tricky. How did you pull that off?
Having trusted data at the core is integral here. We've kind of, I guess, really focused, as I mentioned, on those high impact use cases and trying to evolve those. And I think the key part of that, which I'd kind of stress to a lot of businesses, is bring people on the journey. So one of my mantras I like to follow is communicate openly and often. I think that's really important when you are leading transformation, to bring people along on that journey. People don't realise from business cases how that value realisation comes to be if you're not starting them on that journey early. So I think for us, it's really about engaging early and often, and making sure those stakeholders understand the value that it can bring, not just to marketing, but to other areas of the business to help, I guess, unlock some of that data.
Now, we all know Medibank is private health insurance, but you actually serve a lot of different markets. You've got pet insurance, travellers, international students, and previously you probably only saw one part and missed the opportunity to probably cross-sell and upsell. Without getting too technical, how are you using Data 360 to create a more unified view of your members?
Yeah, I think historically we've had very disparate segments and cohorts around the business, as you kind of allude to. We have, international students that we serve, we have pet owners, we have health insurance customers and those that engage with our programs. So we have a really diverse audience, but I think for us what it's about is trying to understand the next best action for a customer at a holistic level. So regardless of what policy they have, and to be honest, a lot of our customers have multiple policies, they're multiple policy holders. So that really does influence the nuance we need to have with the customer experience overall. We need to ensure that through tools like Marketing Cloud personalisation, which we use to ingest web behaviour and engagement, combining that with offline signals, so that online and offline together, helps just, again, give that contextual relevance to allow that decisioning to take place in a manner that feels, I guess, intimate and personal for the customer and not sort of spammy. That's kind of not what we want, and we want to try and achieve more of that personalised experience.
Now, you mentioned media activation before, and I know that you're also using suppression lists. From a strategic level, how has that led to more real-time data management to help you improve your media efficiency?
Yeah, it's a great question, that one. So obviously, as I mentioned, one of our sort of key business challenges has been around that media activation and audience targeting. And I think for us, we've seen some real benefits so far with that piece. Obviously not just the suppression that you mentioned there, but it's both from a cost benefit and also a time-saving benefit. So our teams used to take about 30 minutes to build and deploy an audience, and that was really like a 3-step process, and it's now down to probably I'd say about 5 minutes, which is an incredible time saving, and it's pretty much a 1-step process now, which is really beneficial for our teams. And I think beyond that, the cost benefits we've reduced significantly with our audience activation and deployment. And that's all kind of baked into our Data 360 contract that allows us to sort of minimise those additional costs with that audience activation, which is fantastic. And I think obviously, the gold standard is for media targeting is you want to be able to drive better personalisation, allow that to inform your overall performance strategy from both a paid and owned perspective. So that smarter targeting, that audience activation piece has been a real unlock for us.
And then you mentioned that you've been on this journey with us since the start. If you had to pick your top use case, the one where Data 360 has delivered the most value, what would it be and why?
Yeah, it's a good one, that one. I think the media targeting and audience activation would definitely be the top one.
Yeah.
Very closely followed by, I'd say, the unification of our custom profile and insights, because as I was mentioning, next best action is critical to understanding customers at all points of their different touch points and journeys. As our customers often are multiple policy holders and have different policies, whether that's pet insurance or health insurance, we need to understand where a customer is at and be able to serve them relevant, timely messages at the right channel at the right time. So for us, unifying that paid and owned experience is essentially very critical for us. And I think by having that unified customer profile insights alongside the media targeting and activation piece, it really allows us to drive that. So yeah, I'm really proud of the journey that we're on in that space. And I think the evolution of that, there's so much more we can do in terms of just being able to create, a better customer experience, but really built on that core foundation, which is Data 360.
Amazing. Brendan, thank you so much for being here today. Thank you for sharing the Medibank story, and thank you for being an Agent Blazer.
My pleasure.